Well, I got involved with storytelling the old-fashioned way, by sitting around and listening as a kid to people visiting around the supper table. I was born and raised on a ranch that was very remote. We were 14 miles to our nearest neighbor. That was all dirt road, and then another 15 miles to the pavement, to our little community that I grew up in. And so the ranch and the people that worked there were a very tight clan, and we ate together and spent our because there was no electricity, it wasn't like you went off and watched TV. So after supper at night, people sat around and told stories. And so it was natural for me to hear the stories of and the different ways people told them. But I think what really got me interested in telling a story in the classical sense was when I was 16. I got figuring that I was way too smart to go to school anymore, and I wanted to be a cowboy, so I quit school, went off and became a cowboy. That first winter I was away from the house. It was coming on Christmas time, and they had a candy boy that would bring supplies to the different camps around these different ranches, bring in the mail, whatever the ranch foreman or the camp tender needed there. It was getting on towards Christmas, and a big box from my folks shows up. It was a week or two before Christmas, but because I was on my own, I didn't even have to wait till Christmas to open it, and man, I was needing anything. I'd have been happy with new overshoes or warmer gloves or a new coat, you know, just anything would have just tickled me to death. And it was a heavy box, and I brought it into that bunkhouse, and I opened it up, and it was books. They all looked the same, and there was no pictures in them, and it was just, I'd never read a book. The books were called the Harvard Classics, and I'd go through all these books, and I'd read about 5 or 6, and I was finding out, you know, I like all these stories. And I just went back and started from volume 1, and before I was drafted into the Army, a couple of years later, I read the 51 volumes of the Harvard Classics. And without knowing it, thinking that I was doing that strictly for my own pleasure, which I was learning from the masters of the world how a good story can be told, how there is no right way, but there's a lot of wrong ways. Over a 26-year career as a cowboy, I had a lot of different opportunity to tell people my stories, and it was met surprisingly with wow, that's good stuff, you ought to go do something with it. Well, what are you going to do with it? There's nobody out there doing it. And through fate, a wonderful guy named Hal Cannon came by and said, I didn't know cowboys did this. And I said, yeah, I know a lot of guys that do it. And that really interested him as this folklorist way of thinking. And said, well, do you reckon if we were to invite a bunch of them, they'd come, and maybe we could have a weekend party doing it? And I didn't think anybody would come, but if I could get my partners in town, have a party for a weekend free, it would sound like a good deal to me. 2,000 people showed up. We made it available, and all of a sudden, people started saying, hey, this is good stuff, we like it. And it's changed my life.